On April the 2nd, 1982, the people of Argentina celebrated the reconquest of the Malvinas, a divided nation united in support of the aggressive action taken by the country's military dictatorship. Barely 2 months later, the Argentine forces in the Falklands surrendered the islands to the British and returned, defeated and humiliated, to the South American mainland. The Argentine army was no match for the British. The majority of its troops were conscripts, poorly equipped and badly led. Its leaders made no effort to defend the islands against a professional force from the developed world. The Falklands War was seen as a triumph for Mrs. Thatcher and the professionalism of the British armed forces. The Conservative Party, under her leadership, won a landslide victory at the general election which followed. The victory was put down to the Falklands factor. Years after the Falklands War, it is possible to tell a different story. That nearly 1,000 men died in an unnecessary war. That the risks were so high that many senior British commanders opposed the action from the start. That luck, rather than military skill, prevented a British disaster. That the British campaign was marred by rivalry and poor planning. And, above all, it was a war which should never have happened.
I am sorry to say this because men's lives were lost and families were bereaved. But I firmly believe that this was an unnecessary war, a war that need not have been fought, in which men's lives on both sides need not have been lost if the government had taken proper precautions.
Britain had been aware of Argentina's aggressive intentions for 40 years before the invasion. In 1942, the pro-Hitler regime in Buenos Aires planned a military solution to the problem of the Malvinas. But the British government warned Argentina against the use of force. If necessary, we must call the Americans in, wrote one of Churchill's cabinet, but we must bar the Argentines. In the face of a determined British response, Argentina backed down. But the belief in the justice of Argentina's claim persisted as strongly as ever over the years that followed.
To me, it is still a mystery why the British are attached to these islands. They have no meaning for them, that are just in front of the Argentine coast, in the middle of the South Atlantic, near everything that is more or less an area of Argentine influence, and 9,000 miles from London, from Britain, from everything. Britain has nothing to do there.
Many in London agreed. But it was the islanders, and not the British government, who were determined that the Falklands remain British. The islanders were mainly sheep farmers, and most were dependent on the Falkland Islands Company for employment and housing. By the 1960s, the economy, dependent on wool, was weak, and the population was diminishing. As Britain's empire declined and her armed forces withdrew from the four corners of the world, the Falkland Islands, thousands of miles from the United Kingdom, but only 300 miles from Argentina, became an increasingly embarrassing and unwanted liability. The military warned that the defense of the Falklands would be almost impossible. Defense and foreign policy now all pointed to one thing: getting rid of the islands. A junior minister, Lord Chalfont, was given the job.
The view was that the Falkland Islands was a kind of hangover from the imperial days, that there was no really intelligent reason why it should remain in the position it was at that moment, and that indeed there were very strong reasons why one should begin talking to the Argentinians about a change of status, because it was pointed out that it was close to Argentina it was a long, long way away from the United Kingdom, that there were all sorts of geographical and other reasons why we should contemplate a change in the status quo. And this, it was towards that end that the Foreign Office thinking was at that moment directed.
Lord Chalfont was sent to the Falklands to discuss the idea of a transfer of sovereignty.
My reception when I arrived in Port Stanley was, shall I say, less than enthusiastic. They said, we are British citizens, we want to remain British citizens, we are not interested in any ideas you have about closer links with Argentina, please go away. It was as simple as that.
The Foreign Office got hold of the idea, I don't know when, that giving the Falklands to Argentina was a small price to pay for better relations with not only Argentina, but with Latin America. That's all right if they could have persuaded the Falkland Islanders that their destiny lay rather with the Argentine than with the United Kingdom and what remained of the empire. The Falkland Islanders were not impressed. They were not of Spanish or Italian origin. They spoke English. They had sent their sons to fight in 2 world wars on our side. They were a small, loyal, decent community, and they were entitled to the protection which only a British Parliament could give them.